Hello and welcome to the Anorak Review Show with your host, the Anorak. In the past few episodes of this series, I've looked at a particular solo album from the vocalist and drummer of the band Genesis, Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins. So I figured it kind of makes sense to look at another solo album by another member of that band, Steve Hackett. Much like Phil Collins, he joined the band at around 1970 or 71 as a replacement for Anthony Phillips, starting with the album Nursery Crime, and being a very important and very prominent member of the band, even when Peter Gabriel left after Lamb and Phil Collins kind of came in to take the chance to be the lead singer. However, that little era of that four-member lineup would be pretty short-lived, what with the albums Trigger the Tail and with Wind and Wuthering, and the live album Seconds Out, and eventually Steve Hackett kind of left the band, mostly out of feeling that a lot of his work weren't really used as much on either album, so he wanted more freedom, I guess. And eventually he did work on some solo albums across the mid to late 70s, with albums like Voyage of the Acolyte, Spectral Mornings, Deflector, and Please Don't Touch. Out of all the solo albums, or the series of solo albums of any of the Genesis members, Steve Hackett's is a kind of the more Genesis-ish. It definitely sounds more like the band's old 70s prog rock style than any of the other solo member stuff like Peter Gabriel's and Phil Collins, or even Tony Banks or Mike Rutherford's and his Mechanics. Even if by then he still kind of diverted to come up with his own sounds and own styles. And today we're taking a look at an album where we kind of see a bit of that transition from the more Genesis light sound that Steve had to a slightly more poppier and more acoustic sound. And fittingly enough, this too was released about 40 years ago. So today we're taking a look at his fifth album, simply titled Cured. The cover in question is, as you can see, it's pretty simple. It's just basically like a snapshot of Steve Hackett himself taken by his then wife Kim Poor, sitting in what seems to be some kind of Mediterranean seaside, or wherever. I don't know exactly where it was actually taken, but it does look like a pretty nice place to have a nice little holiday in. If it weren't for the pandemic, of course. Granted, the quality of the cover, at least the copy I have, isn't exactly the best dish of quality, but with cameras back in the late 70s and 80s, you gotta do what you have. It does. And the title of Cured, I can't really figure out the meaning of it or the inspiration behind it. My guess is that with touring with his own band across the late 70s, he kind of felt a bit exhausted from the overwork and all, so he decided to just kind of move to a different country and kind of record some more simpler, less complex material, and therefore the word cured could refer to him being cured of his exhaustion and tiredness. Or that he's being cured by that little tin and water drink he's having there, maybe. So anyway, with that aside, let's actually dig into the music itself and see if it holds up after all these years. We begin the album with Hope I Don't Wake, starting with a very interesting a cappella that reminds me of something out of Kansas or something. Hope I Don't Wake is a very simple pop tune that starts off radically different from any previous Genesis stuff, let alone Steve Hackett's own solo work. And the lyrics here seem to sing about this person feeling fatigue or insomnia, about how he's always suspecting someone sneaking in the night, or hoping that tomorrow would be a better day than the last. Or he could just be singing from the point of view of that dad character from that weird Shush Don't Wake Dad board game. Does anyone actually remember that? That game really was weird. Speaking of singing, Steve Hackett not only does the vocals for this song, but for all the songs on this album, making it the first to do so. And of course, he does all the guitars and bass on it, while the drum machine and all the keyboards are handled by Nick Magnus. So it's technically more of mostly a two-people effort of an album, which is pretty interesting, even if the album itself is very small scale as a result. But regardless, it's still interesting to hear a very minimalist sounding song from an otherwise very prolific guitarist. Some of the guitars in the song do give off a somewhat Wind and Wuthering vibe anyway, which I suppose kind of fits since that was the last album he was on, Genesis, and being 5 years earlier, it does seem kind of fresh in his mind. Well, anyway, next is the song Picture Postcard, slightly more mellow than the first track. This one kind of deals with what is presumably the aftermaths of some kind of breakup or some kind of upsetting event that happened to this singer, and how he doesn't want to be reminded of it, which explains why he doesn't want a picture postcard of it, as even a pleasant memory could make him remember something that's, well, not quite so pleasant. And how at the same time, though, he doesn't really want to be alone either, wanting a friend to talk to or spend time in chemistry with. The music itself in question also has that kind of bit of a Foreigner Toto vibe to it, and the keyboards themselves do remind me a bit of something out of Duke or Then There Were Three. Steve's vocals in question here do seem to be at a very high octave, and still very slightly different from the previous song. In fact, in a way his vocals seem very distinct from someone like Peter Gabriel's or Phil Collins. In fact, part of me kind of wonders what it would be like if Steve Hackett was instead chosen to be the lead singer for Genesis after Peter Gabriel quit it. Well, anyways, in the song itself, we kind of end with some vocoded backing vocals, presumably by Nick Magnus himself, and a bit of a nice soothing saxophone solo, very reminiscent of If Leaving Me Is Easy by Phil, which is performed by, I kid you not, a person named Bimbo a Cock. There is literally a person out there named Bimbo a Cock. Even with a name like that, he still must be pretty talented. I hope he does have a good career. Next is Cant Let Go. It begins with a very slow but very suspenseful bass rhythm, accompanied by a slow rising synth note, which goes on for about a minute until the drums eventually kick in and we get into the actual melody of the song, which kind of reminds me a bit of something out of the Alan Parsons Project. And we also get into Steve Hackett's vocals again, which do sound like something you'd hear out of a Boston song. Here he sings about how he's found this other person who he imagines as like both an angel and a dragon, and how he can't seem to let go of this person, as if he's obsessed and wants to get into a relationship with this person. Almost as if it kind of continues on from the themes of the previous song, Picture Postcard, where he kind of tries to move on from a broken relationship, and now here he finds an opportunity to get himself into a new relationship, and this time much better, much healthier, much more positive. And out of all the songs of this album, this one seems the most proggiest, if that makes any sense. In fact, it's the longest song of the album, clocking at about 5 minutes and 43 seconds. And it kind of, in a way, this kind of feels like, shall I say, a prog pop song. It has a standard verse, bridge, chorus structure that you'd get out of most conventional pop songs, but it also has the extended instrumental intros and outros that you would get out of most progressive rock songs. And in a way, it does seem like a good balance of both. It's interesting how both Steve and the band Genesis kind of went to this kind of middle ground between pop and prog music, which I think I find pretty interesting. Side 1 ends with The Air-Conditioned Nightmare, and a title like that wouldn't exactly seem out of place from a song from The Lamb Slides Down on Broadway, and the same could be said with the song itself. One of two instrumentals of the album, it begins with a very long yet very noticeable screeching and sliding of a particular guitar before it then kickstarts into this almost sounding like an improv of guitars and the synth and even back pedals by Steve's younger brother John Hackett. In a way, it kind of sounds like video game music or even boss battle music. I could definitely see us playing while I'm battling some big monster in a video game like Super Nintendo Final Fantasy style. It is another demonstration of Steve Hackett as a guitarist and also as a songwriter and musician. It almost kind of fits with the kind of late 70s and early 80s style of Genesis music. And it kind of makes me wish and think about an alternate world where Steve Hackett would indeed stay as a member of the band had they let him share some of the stuff on their actual albums. And keep in mind, this was released a month before the Genesis album Abacab, which I might look into sometime down the road. Trust me. Speaking of Abacab, side 2 begins with Funny Feeling. A much more lively and funkier kind of song compared to the previous tracks, which in terms of its music doesn't exactly seem out of place from the Abacab album, especially with its sense of dissonance between the music and the lyrics, which in question seemed to be about the singer having this funny feeling or a suspicion that their significant other is not only going out tonight, but also might be getting into some kind of trouble, maybe doing something dirty or naughty, or even having an affair and cheating, which I think kind of goes full circle from some of the lyrical themes of some of the previous songs, in particular Picture, Postcard, and Can't Let Go. Picture Postcard kind of dealt with a kind of breakup, at least inexplicitly, and Can't Let Go seems to be about someone getting into a new relationship. But then we get to Funny Feeling, where we find out that person that this singer had an affection for may or may not be going out and just cheating, and we're kind of back to square one with Picture Postcard, and he's kind of breaking up with them. And in terms of music, Steve Hackett seems to have a kind of John Anderson-esque-ness to his delivery, if you know what I mean. Especially in the chorus of don't tell a lie and I'd rather say goodbye, as if to say that he doesn't like to be lied to and he'd rather just break it off instead of just living through these like lies and false truths. And the guitar in the middle bit and the ending do give off a kind of jazzy feeling, almost lighthearted, but not entirely optimistic. It's also the only song of the album where Nick Magnus is co-credited as co-writer of the song. Anyway, next is A Cradle of Swans, which, by the way, considering a cradle is usually for infants and babies, wouldn't it technically be a cradle of cygnets? I don't know. Well, anyways, this is the only other instrumental of the song, and this one is just basically a few minutes of Steve Hackett on acoustic guitars, not unlike, say, the Genesis songs Horizon and After the Ordeal. And much like those, this gives off a very calm, soothing, and relaxing feel to it. It almost has this kind of summery feel to it, like the kind of music you'd probably listen to while you're out relaxing in some beach or outside of a hotel in some Mediterranean countryside or beach or something. It's kind of a bit of a relaxing song after many almost dancey, very lively, upbeat songs. It's nice to have a song to calm and chill out to, and much like previous songs, it still demonstrates Steve Hackett as a player and admirer of classical guitar music. And if you like chill out guitar music, then I definitely check this out among other songs that Steve Hackett had made. Then we have Overnight Sleeper, another one of the more proggier sounding songs of the album. This one kind of combines the sounds of 70s folky music with the 80s poppy music, almost kind of reminiscent of something out of Yes or Mike Oldfield. The lyrics seem to sing about how this person keeps dreaming about chasing trains, and each and every time they keep missing, and it keeps going on over and over in this never-ending cycle of chasing and missing until they eventually wake up. I think this kind of also ties into the themes of exhaustion, insomnia, and fatigue that Hope I Don't Wake kind of went into a bit. And John Hackett, who did bass pedals in the Airconditioned Nightmare, returns here to play a bit of flute here, almost channeling Peter Gabriel's signature flute during his Genesis era. The opening synth in question does have this kind of suspenseful feeling to it, to the synth, as well as this subtle yet noticeable sound of what seems to resemble the shunting of trains, which seems to go into the themes of chasing and missing trains in this very dream itself. And much like Funny Feeling, this is the only other song on the album which is co-credited, this time to Steve's wife, Kim Poor, who, by the way, as I forgot to mention, also designed many of Steve Hackett's album covers, and a lot of them, I have to say, look pretty amazing and almost seem gorgeous in a way. I might go into them if I do talk about another Steve Hackett album another time, but let me just say, if you haven't seen them, they look very pretty, and some of them are even worth being set up as paintings in a museum or something. And so the album closes with Turn Back Time, not to be confused with the same song title by Cher, but this one also seems like a bit of a soft rock song, and boy is it one that closes out this album. It has this kind of dreamy, almost euphoric kind of feel, like a dream or a fantasy or something. Lyrically, it kind of goes into how it's essentially a love song, really, with a bit of a sense of nostalgia and a wish for simpler things, and how words seem to form like a caterpillar on a cage, a very hungry caterpillar, if you will, and how the singer seems to feel like they're in a cage. Well, someone get him out of that cage. And it still has Steve Hackett's vocals, which which has a sense of harmony to it, which is something that you notice for most of the songs of this album. Nick Magnus's keyboards definitely do dominate this song, as Steve's guitars seem to be really, really downplayed, if not almost completely absent. But lack of guitars doesn't mean it's a bad song. It's another nice, soothing, chilling, and relaxing song, and it's definitely something that you could do a slow, like ball-like dance to, and to any big fans who are big fans of his prog rock style music, something like this may alienate you a bit, but if you manage to give it a chance or listen, you might get used to it and you might find it very charming. And overall, Steve Hackett's Cured is, all in all, a very interesting and unique album, at least even from Steve Hackett's own solo discography. It's even actually one of his more shorter albums, much like Black Sabbath's Master of Reality, at about 33 to 34 minutes, which again is something I might nitpick a bit. If it had like 10 minutes more of like music material, like up to like 43 minutes or so, like any normal album, it probably would have been much stronger. But as is, it's still a very interesting and unique song, with a balance of both lively and poppy, but also very calm and soothing ones, and still has some of Steve Hackett's conventional prog rock elements. So if you're a big fan of Genesis, or you like to get into Steve Hackett's solo work, just bear in mind you won't get too much of the classic Genesis style prog music, but I'd say listen to this with an open mind and see if all in all this is worth giving a chance, and see all in all if the album like this is definitely a cure for you. Next time, we're gonna go way back this time around, back to the mid-1960s, to take a look at an album by those four old guys from Liverpool.